So today, Russell Hemmings and one of his clients discuss working together.
My name is Deanne Diego and I'm currently a student. I used to have a lot of panic attacks. He was basically someone my mum actually saw on Facebook, and my father read his articles quite regularly on the Friday magazine. So they thought he would be the right fit for me, and he was. He understood exactly what my problem was, and he actually helped me cope with it way, way, way more efficiently. So that's how I met Russell.
Can you tell us about how you felt and how you were feeling prior to working with Russell?
Well, prior to working with Russell, I've actually been to see a lot of professionals in the field when it comes to anxiety, etc. I've personally visited. They've always misunderstood me or undermined my problems, and they've not really understood what my problem was, and that just made me feel extremely brushed. They just brushed me off, and that felt really, really bad. And I was extremely reluctant on meeting someone. And when my mom suggested Russell, I immediately said no, and I didn't want to actually meet with him. But then my mom said, just give one phone call a try, and if you don't want to go to him after that, it's fine. And then I got on the phone with Russell and I met with him, and then we hit it off, and I actually felt like he recognized and he knew what he was talking about, especially when it came to problems relating to me. And prior to meeting with Russell, I used to have a lot of panic attacks. I would feel low for long periods of time together, and my grades started slipping up because I would have panic attacks during my exams, and I was just not coping with anything very nicely. I felt very detached from reality, and that wasn't a very good place to be in.
And Russell, when Deanne first came to you, what were your immediate reactions? What were your immediate thoughts?
Well, I work daily with anxiety states and emotions. I think if we go back in time, Deanne, when you came to see me, you've been studying in Canada.
Yes.
And you felt anxious, and you headed home, and you stopped studying on that particular course. You were overwhelmed and not in a particularly good place. What I do is look at the cause. So I go to not the symptom, which is what we use in medication, that addresses the symptom, but I look at the underlying cause, the thoughts that cause the symptoms. So usually it's going to be one of four things: being judged negatively, or fear of the feelings that you get with anxiety, or not achieving your personal goals, which I think possibly that was something that was interfering with your psyche, that you were not achieving your personal goals. You weren't, things weren't going the way you wanted them to go, and they had to. Also, failure can cause anxiety. So maybe you were failing to achieve that which you must have. And so, or something, anxiety can be caused by something happening or not happening. So if things don't go to plan, and they have to go to plan, then we can get anxiety. So the first thing I did was interview, I call it a 360. I interviewed Deanne and found out the source of the anxiety. I run a program for people here, dealing with their emotions, not just anxiety. It could be anxiety, depression, anger, envy, jealousy, etc. So we look at the unhealthy beliefs that people hold, because believe it or not, people think in ways that they don't always know cause their problems. So you can think a thought, you can have an unhealthy belief, like, for instance, I must get an A in an exam, and not realize that thinking I must get an A will actually cause you anxiety. And over the long term, that those chemical changes in the brain will create the cloudy thoughts. And I think you touched on a minute ago, didn't you? You said, how do you describe your brain when you were experiencing anxiety?
I wasn't able to think straight.
That description, which is great, you weren't able to think straight. Sometimes call it cloudy thinking. Well, that is cortisol. And we produce cortisol when we're frightened to help us escape a danger. But if you are constantly worrying, and you're constantly in danger, and you're constantly producing cortisol, that interferes with the synaptic jump in the brain. So where we have thoughts. So if you can imagine neurons, like a mushroom shape in your brain, so we've got millions of them, and it goes from positive to negative and jumps across. Well, constantly worrying can produce chemicals that create a cloud in that gap, the synaptic gap, and stops the firing or interferes with the firing of thoughts. You would describe that as cloudy thinking, or not being able to think straight. Or it could be racing thoughts. So the first thing I did was identify the source of the anxiety, which was, in your case, I believe, the fear of failure, not achieving your personal goals.
Fear of failing, then loneliness also. Then another aspect would be, I had certain benchmarks that when I wouldn't achieve those benchmarks for myself, I wouldn't know what to do. I couldn't cope at all. So yeah, they were not achieving my own set standards or goals.
So you set your bar here, and you weren't living up to your own expectations. Therefore, I must live up to those expectations. And the fact that I'm not living up to those expectations means I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean you're a failure at all. It just means you're not achieving your own expectations. Ironically, if you don't have a bar, let's remove the bar, throw it away. And ironically, people perform better if they just attempt to do their best instead of reaching for this bar, because sometimes they don't hit it and they feel like they've failed when everyone else is saying, well, actually, you got 90% there. You're saying, yeah, but I needed 100. You know, you possibly were doing some of that.
Deanne, can you tell us a little bit more about the exam side of things, particularly about we've touched on sort of potentially kind of flunking or not, not being able to get the results you expected, to turning it around and turning sort of from failure to success. Can you just give us a little bit more on that?
When I was in Canada, I wasn't doing as well as I would hope to have done, because I would have panic attacks during my exam. So if you asked me the same matter before or after the exam, I would be able to answer you. But during the exam, I just go blank because of my anxiety. And I wasn't doing as well as I had hoped. I was slipping in grades, and I wasn't coping. And when I met with Russell, he taught me things that helped me cope. And then the same subject, which I retook here in Dubai when I started university here, I managed to get the grades which would actually describe how I usually study, and it would amount to the hard work I put in, because I was able to actually apply what I've learned rather than just freak out during the exam and just have a panic attack. So my grade can actually see the graph go up, because I'm doing really, really well in school. In university, and it's amazing to see the same subject, especially like one of my subjects, I couldn't pass my final in the previous university, and in this university, I was getting an 87 on 100, and it was pretty good. So from 0 to 87 was a huge.
Can you explain sort of how your brain is firing now, how you're able to, whether it beyond exams, just you in general, but how you're more sort of less negative, more positive?
Yes, because initially when I would make mistakes or when I would do something that didn't go as per plan, I would instantly have panic attacks again, and I would be really extremely hard on myself. Russell helped me change my the way I thought about mistakes in general, that it makes us human. And he made me realize that things that what I thought would be catastrophic, like it's something that I wouldn't even speak of. He taught me that things like this happen and you need to be able to cope with it. It's not the end of the world, he says. And that way I was actually like, I have a completely new kind of perspective on things. Even be it this COVID situation, initially I would be having panic attacks every day. I would be probably in a very, very bad condition because of already having anxiety. But I actually just stay productive, and I try to, he taught me that exercise also helps. So I try to incorporate that as well. And in that way, I actually stay pretty positive even in times like this.
It's quite poignant because a lot of people contact me with the condition of blanking in exams. So can you describe what was going on in the exam as best as you can? When you go into an exam, prior to the work that we did that changed those and got you the results that you've got, what were you thinking at that moment before you blanked?
For me, it was mostly, I would study and I would do all my prep. But my expectations from that exam itself was I need to get an A. I need to get a high grade. And
Okay.
it was a need. It wasn't even just a preference. It was a desperate need.
Do we
And
say I must get a high grade?
so it was always that kind of pressure on the exam itself. So if it was a question that was even slightly phrased different or something that I didn't know, it would need to get everything and doubt everything I know. And then the entire exam that I was giving, I would end up forgetting all the answers, including like writing my name in or whatever register number I had to put in. So that wasn't
your name.
Not my name, but if it was a number, like my register number, I
Yep.
would overthink that, and I would recheck and I'd be like, is that right? And I've written the same number for different exams.
Yeah.
So it was me just forgetting everything and just overthinking each answer, even if I was completely right. It wasn't a very good, yeah.
Were your panic attacks always centered around expectations? So were they always centered around exams, kind of when you had to perform, or were they a central part of your life?
Basically, my panic attacks, they were mostly centered around academics when I was even if it was me letting a group project, if there was a slight hiccup and I was responsible for it, I would end up getting panic attacks because of it. Even in social surroundings, I remember when I initially joined university, I had a very tough time just speaking to other people because I was extremely anxious all the time. And it was because of that, it got frustrating, but it wasn't just academics. I would say even in social circles and everything. But basically, there are a few techniques that helped me cope with it, which Russell has taught me, and that's how I kind of balance it out.
Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about those techniques?
So my most favorite technique is basically 7-11, which is a breathing technique that Russell taught me, and it taught me that I wasn't breathing right in the first place. I used to have anxiety attacks on buses as well when it was really crowded, and it would almost instantaneously calm me down, and I would stop getting anxious. And basically, some of the symptoms when you have a panic attack would be, at least personally, it was my legs. I would feel like they were so heavy and you call that jelly leg. So I would have those. I would start, like my vision would start being a little fuzzy. I wasn't able to think. I would start sweating and breathing excessively. And basically with 7-11, it calms your system down. And that's something Russell has taught me to do. It takes a bit to learn how to master the technique, and I wouldn't say I have mastered it yet, but it calms me down from having panic attacks. Then another one was two chairs that he taught me. It's basically where you sit. It's basically for your thoughts, where you convince yourself that if you're having a negative thought or if you're having something that's putting too much pressure on yourself, you speak to yourself as a third person and you just basically get up from one chair to the other. And that's another way, that's something that's helped me like a lot. And it's something I still do, that and 7-11 for my breathing, and that keeps everything in check.
First of all, let's go back to panic attacks, because panic attack is a horrible title. Panic, we're not actually being attacked. I like to refer to it as a heightened state of awareness. But people's panic attacks are different. Different people have different experiences. So let me explain some of the reasons why you get those symptoms, which I did in our sessions. But when you understand that every single symptom that you get is really useful if you're in danger, but they're not useful if you're sitting in an exam room or on a bus.
Yeah.
Because a racing heart, for instance, is just going to make you feel there's something wrong with your heart. So when we're frightened and we're in danger, we usually will want to leave the vicinity of the danger or stand and remove the danger. We call that the fight or flight response. Now, if we go a bit deeper into that, what happens is the adrenal glands in our body release adrenaline, and also in the cocktail there's a chemical called cortisol and noradrenaline. And they're very powerful, and they make us stronger, faster, quicker, and give us the tools to survive. So we could climb a tree, jump a fence, throw a desk up if someone is pointing a gun at you, or run away from the danger. Really useful. But when you're still and not in danger, or at least you're not in real danger, because you perceive danger, the danger of failing an exam, the danger of not being able to get off the bus, or people looking at you, the danger of being judged badly, or letting other people down. Sometimes people have blanking in exams because they don't want to let their teacher down, or they don't want to let their parents down. The parents are saying, you won't let us down, we love you, whatever you grade you get. And I think that was the case with your parents. I remember talking to your mum and dad. They say, we love her unconditionally. A, B, or C. She could fail. We just love her. And the reality is you take that and interpret it completely differently. I must not let my parents down. And if I let my parents down, I have failed them. Therefore, I must not fail them. Now you're in danger, because what if you don't get the grades you need to not let them down? And they're on the other side of the world going, she'll never let us down. She can't answer. So what happens is in the body, this adrenaline, it does things, and the cortisol does things that you feel. So you describe jelly legs. All that's happening is, and sometimes you ever get nausea or butterflies in the stomach at the same time? Okay. All that's happening is in the digestive system is your blood is being redirected. You don't need to eat a burger whilst running away from a tiger. So we're designed to send that blood from the digestive system into the legs and arms. Why? So we can run away from the tiger or stand and fight the oppressor. And so that feeling is butterflies in the stomach, and the jelly leg is lots of blood in the legs. And if we ran, that feeling would go. But because we're sitting or trying to get off the bus where we're feeling jelly-legged, what happens is those legs feel heavy and they feel odd. So you feel a bit wobbly. But there's a practical reason for that. Then our pupils open up to let in more light so we can see the danger. But if our pupils open up while we're staring at an exam paper, we actually defocus. So the words become blurred. But they're really useful if you're being chased by someone or an animal. If your pupils open up and let in more light, you'll see movement. So there's a really useful reason for every single symptom in the, dare I say, the heightened state of awareness, not panic attacks, because we're not attacked. But if you do the whole process in thinking, change your thoughts, change your breathing, and all the other tools that I gave you, then you'll eliminate panic and therefore eliminate blanking.
Obviously, you spoke at length about panic attacks. Did you have the situation where you became anxious because you were worrying you were going to have a panic attack? Did it kind of creep up on you in that way?
Yeah, that still sometimes happens when I think I'm going to be having a panic attack, and that just makes me more anxious. And the only reason being because initially, whenever I would have panic attacks, I wasn't very well versed and informed about them. So I didn't really know what they were. And I just thought that I was going to, this sounds bizarre, but I thought I was going to end up with paralysis or something of that sort. It would just frighten me, and that would make me more anxious because yeah, it's happening. And initially I had no control over it. And that would just be a very frustrating situation. And because I couldn't control it, it would make things way worse. So initially it was like that. Now I'm not as scared of having panic attacks, or as Russell puts it, heightened state of awareness. I don't really mind it happening because I know I can control it now. He's actually shown me that I can control it. So it's no longer an issue for me. So it's not something.
Your problem reminded me of a ball of string that was all tangled up, and there was multiple layers of worries that were going on. And in the first sessions, we just unpicked the string and just lay it out on the table.
If you just tell us about where you are this second.
Yeah, so basically, Russell has helped me cope with my anxiety and everything really well. And right now, I'm at a place where I don't mind taking on extra workload because I know I'll work hard for it. It has also laid off some of the pressure from myself that I had because I put it on myself. And because I took out the pressure from it, I tend to excel in my work now. I actually enjoy doing it. It's no longer something I have to do, but it's something that I prefer to do. And because of that, it just makes life a little more enjoyable, if I'm being honest. And even in terms of grades, even in terms of making friends, like initially when I shifted from Canada and I decided to do university in Dubai, I hated university in Dubai. I almost came to Russell's first meeting crying because I had such a bad day in university. But now that's the same university that I miss so much because all my friends are there. I love going to my classes, and everything just seems really, really, it's like a way more, it's the greener side of things now. And I'm in a much better place than I was. I didn't even want to meet with Russell because I was like, first of all, he's in Dubai and I'm in Abu Dhabi. And I just said no. But the first meeting I had with him, I used to feel very detached from myself. And I would tell my dad, I would say, I feel detached, and I would do this. And the first time we met with Russell, he did the same thing. And that's when I knew that he's not just someone who's learned it from the books, but since he's experienced it, he knows exactly what I'm going through. And he's not someone who's going to take this lightly or over exaggerate the problem, but he's just gonna, like, he was gonna help me. And the way he spoke, like, he was pretty confident because he knew what he was doing because he had experienced it. And because of that, there was some sort of trust that I had in him. And then it did work out. So I'm quite happy.
I think the biggest blessing that I ever received was at a time in my life when I was in a really bad place and I was experiencing anxiety, panic attacks. And then later, because the panic attacks didn't go away and I wanted them to go away, I became depressed. And it isn't until you start to understand the thoughts that you're holding are actually hindering your recovery.
Yeah.
So if you don't change your thoughts, the feelings won't change. And I suppose that my work is really about going upstream.
Yeah.
Why are you feeling like that? Why are you blanking? Why are you getting panic attacks? Why are you feeling anxious? Because there's always a why. When you find out what the why is, then you can address it and find out what the thoughts are, and then show that person that they're unhealthy for them. And these are the healthy thoughts. And then, you explained a technique that I was trained in called two chair. You skirted over it. Two chair is a technique where you actually get two chairs, literally. And you get the person to sit in one chair with the unhealthy beliefs. And then you ask that person to then sit in another chair and face themselves as if they were sitting in the chair and show them the healthy belief. And what happens is, when the person that's been thinking in the unhealthy way hears themselves saying out loud Sounds odd, doesn't it? The healthy way of thinking. It's rather like having an argument, having a belief. If you've got a strong belief in something and you argue, you raise your voice and you commit, you're wrong, it's this way. And so two-chair is a technique which I sometimes use, don't always use it, but two-chair is a way of getting the client to acknowledge the healthy belief and hear themselves say it out loud. Because what's happening is, for many months or even years, when people are suffering with anxiety, they're saying unhealthy things to themselves, like, I must not feel like this, I must get an A, I must not let my family down. And they're unhealthy. And it's very simple. If you hold an unhealthy belief, it has characteristics. One of the characteristics is it causes psychological disturbance, panic attacks, for instance. It also causes physical symptoms. And it's not goal-orientated. What was the goal? To sit you in an exam so you can share your information with a clear mind. That's all. But were your thoughts hindering that or encouraging that clear mind? And your thoughts were hindering it. So they're not goal-orientated. And once you can tick those boxes, that it's not goal-orientated, psychologically disturbing, my heart is racing, I've got a dry mouth, jelly-legged, racing thoughts. Once you tick those boxes, then we can then say that is an unhealthy belief. Now, here's the healthy beliefs that other students are thinking when they take an exam, that are getting A's and B's and C's with a clear mind. They think like this. And I've mapped those thoughts. And all I did was showed you what they were thinking, proved to you your unhealthy beliefs were unhealthy, disputed them, I call it. It's like taking them to court and proving to the jury they're wrong. You shouldn't be thinking like that because it will cause all these symptoms. You got that. And then I got the healthy beliefs and I proved they were right. We disputed those as well. So I proved to you that these healthy thoughts work. And the first exam that you went into, you used that. And what was the result? What did you get?
I got an 83 on 100.
And what did you get previously by using the unhealthy beliefs?
I think I got a 40 something, 40, probably
I rest my case. You doubled your score, but your intelligence was always there. You did study well. It's just that you couldn't retrieve the information because of the fight or flight response. But once we'd input the healthy beliefs and then added to that 7-11 breathing, etc., you were able to enter the exam. You took away the bar and threw it away. It was like, I'm just sharing my knowledge. And you became, or rather you didn't become results orientated. It was like, trust me, don't focus on the result, just share your knowledge.
Thank you, Russell.
It's my pleasure.